gonna give you guys a 5,000 mile review of the Ironman 4x4 Foam Cell Pro suspension kit we have installed on the truck. And we're gonna go over some of the installation, on-road and off-road performance, and finally just like how we like it overall.
So in terms of installation of the Ironman 4x4 Foam Cell Pro, essentially what you could do if you wanted to save a lot of time but you're okay with spending more money, you could work with a professional and they can do the installation because they've got all the tools available right at their hands. We ended up taking it to a rented garage space where all the tools that would be at a garage are basically rentable to you. So we had it on a jack lift, so it brought the whole car up for us. And it basically took 2 full days worth of time. 1, because we had some missing parts and we didn't realize it. 2, because it was a lot of trial and error as we started. There was a lot more brute force involved in some of the parts, mainly being the control arm and also the leaf spring alignment. Both of those things ended up being the most struggle for us in terms of physical force, and also just like figuring out how to do it while watching a YouTube video telling us kind of how to work on it. So generally speaking, would probably recommend, unless you're really comfortable with the DIY experience, should probably take it to a professional, just because there's a lot of extra parts that even we didn't finish. Mainly speaking, we still have the OEM upper control arm. We were never able to successfully undo this and bend it so we could get the new one, which would have gone with this one. We struggled with the force of even getting it out and could never clear that bolt. So that's one of the things that we would probably recommend. Maybe think about taking it to a professional if you really don't have, like, thinking you have the strength to finish it, or you're just not comfortable with making big changes like this in here.
So in terms of the on-road performance, we did the front suspension first, and then the back, because we're missing like 2 of the polyurethane bushing that's supplied by Ironman. We just didn't get them. Also, the shock absorber we received was for the Nissan Patrol, which is like a Marta in the US, I think. So we couldn't get it done for the first day, and then the second time, so we kind of had an experience that we drove only with the front suspension, with a kind of mix and match with the front aftermarket with the OEM back leaf spring. So we found out like that the front suspension did not add too much of a harshness to the ride. So you just mainly reduced a little bit of a nosedive when you do like heavy braking, stuff like that, and then made the front handling while turning is kind of little more responsive, little harder than what the OEM springs do. And then the back spring, when we install the leaf springs on, I have the 0 to 440 pound dynamic load leaf springs. The moment we put them on and then we did a test ride, the ride definitely got harsher. Like I think the biggest change is the rear leaf spring. I think they have a much higher load capacity compared to the OEM ones, so the ride immediately got harsher. And then just like going over, for example, speed bumps, or speed bumps at a parking lot, or on the highway there's like some potholes, you feel that the rear of the truck is like definitely, you know, bouncing a little bit, like very hard and quick response kind of bouncing. So that's something, you know, if you do mainly road driving, I'm not sure if this is like, you know, something that you just kind of need to be aware of, because you will definitely lose some of the comfort that you have from the OEM spring. So now let's talk about the off-road driving experience. So the biggest thing we've really noticed is that the comfort zone initially, when we had the OEM one, when you go over the bumps, like you have to kind of go over relatively slower. For example, like pothole roads, stuff like that, like a little gravel with some loose rock. You just have to go a little slower, like around, like, you know, no more than like 15 miles. Once you go over like around like 30 miles per hour, you start to get little harsh bumps. But then it's kind of when you have these Ironman 4x4 Foam Cell Pro in suspension, they kind of bring up the comfort zone to a little higher speed range. So sometimes like we found out, like when we go over the bumps like at 25 miles or to 30 miles, I mean obviously small bumps, you don't want to go over like a giant pothole, you know, to destroy your suspension, of course. But just like kind of it definitely moves the comfort zone up a little bit. And then in terms of other off-road driving, we did a little like kind of a rockier trail, like more difficult trail. The ground clearance definitely helps. Like we were able to put the bigger like 33-inch KO2 tires on, and we lowered the tire pressure to like around 15 psi. We did the Evans Creek Trail around the Pacific Northwest, like near the greater Seattle area. It was a lot of fun. And then I think with the stock wheel tire setup, yes, you could do it, but just like, you know, it's like definitely gives you a little more confidence going over those. And in terms of driving at higher speed at a 50 to 7 mile on those washboard road in the desert, which we did in around Death Valley area when we had a road trip to there, it was super smooth. Like at 50 to 70 miles, it didn't feel like driving on the highway, of course, but it was very smooth. It was in control, and then the suspension rebounds was good. And then we drove around 8 hours. I didn't find any like suspension fade or whatnot, and that day was like 120 degree Fahrenheit. So I don't see like people issue with like, oh, if you're driving the hot days, you need a remote reservoir or whatnot. So we didn't have issue with that. But again, if you're intensive off-road drivers around the desert all the time, you should probably upgrade to something like Icon, or you know, high stage Icon or King shocks with a remote res. So that's just like, you know, we don't have too much of experience of driving Mojave or, you know, pre-runner for Baja, stuff like that. That's just not what we do here in PNW. So here are the issues, the small issues we had with them. So they might not be big ones, but just like something I need to point out. So the first thing is that the leaf spring installation, the polyurethane bushings. So we follow the guy's instruction video, put like a huge amount of red grease, which we did, and then so that kind of to prevent the squeaking. However, we found out after about a few months, the squeaking started to come out, and it's very loud. And I'm just gonna demonstrate to you what it sounds like. It happens when you go over bumps, when you getting in and out of the truck. It just sounds very annoying. So something that, you know, keep in mind. If you want to make sure to eliminate this, you probably want to follow some of the online instructions to kind of tape them, or using some anti-squeaky things or whatnot. So I'm gonna demonstrate that to you, what it sounds like. Yeah, so it's I think today it's relatively cold, so it just didn't have as loud, but sometimes like when we're at home, even getting in and out of the truck, it sounds super annoying. So that's something you definitely should be focusing on to be prior to your installation. If you're doing at the shop, just tell them, hey, put some anti-squeak, I don't know, if they're like marine grease or whatnot. Like there must be some online solutions. We just don't want to take it out and then redo it in anytime soon. So that's the first thing. So the second issue we have is still with the leaf spring, is that the load capacity we got, I think is maybe, this is like the issue with our choice. It's not like, I don't think it's Ironman's problem. It's like we chose the 0 to 440 pounds dynamic load range. So we had a road trip, and I'm pretty sure you guys have seen like sometimes like the previous videos, we have like the bat rack and a tent on, so those are about like 200 pounds. And we also had a road trip to Nevada, and we had 4 people sitting in, and the entire bed was filled with all our baggages, luggage, stuff like that. So we had like full-on a week-long trip that we probably maxed it out quite a bit. Like the total load was like, I mean, around like definitely over around the 1,000 pound range. And then the truck squatted a bit. Like I didn't have like much of a, I didn't have the footage about that, but we squatted to the point that our low beam light at night literally just pointing up like a high beam. So we got a lot of flashes. So from other drivers, they think we're using high beams because we have the 2020 LED package, so they're extremely bright. So that kind of annoyed a lot of people out. And then yeah, that's something you need to notice. If you actually have rooftop tent, you tend to carry a lot of gears for your long distance trip. Just keep in mind, get the constant load instead of the performance load. I'm pretty sure this will apply to the front suspension as well. So the front one, we have the dynamic load, but as you can see, we don't have like we don't have steel bumper, winch, or anything that's pretty heavy. So far we don't have too much rubbing without any overtrimming. But I'm guessing when I have the load on another, like, you know, 100 200 pounds, this might be an issue, but we'll definitely keep you guys updated. So just like make sure that you know your load capacity you're gonna put on your truck. So if you're gonna build like a 6,000 pound heavy truck, then definitely go with a higher load rating. So that's something that we didn't really notice until the back. But again, you know, when we remove the bed rack, since it's too cold now, we're not gonna go camping very often, so we just, like, you know, take it off and just save some gas. So it's doing just fine. So just make sure you research your load prior to buying them.